The unexpected offer. Jack Hawkins wiped the grease from his hands, grimacing at the stubborn stains that refused to budge. The maintenance bay of Starport Alpha 9 hummed with activity, but Jack felt a million light-years away from the excitement of space travel. Once, he'd dreamed of captaining his own ship, exploring the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Now he was lucky if he could afford the parts to keep other people's ships running. A sudden hush fell over the busy hangar. Jack looked up, his eyes widening at the sight before him. A tall, graceful figure glided through the crowd, her skin a mesmerizing shade of iridescent blue. Delicate, swirling patterns adorned her arms and face, pulsing gently with an inner light. Her eyes, a deep violet that seemed to hold the mysteries of the cosmos, scanned the room before settling on Jack. "Are you the one they call the miracle worker?" Her voice was melodic, with an otherworldly lilt that sent a shiver down Jack's spine. He cleared his throat, suddenly aware of his oil-stained coveralls and disheveled appearance. Yes, ma'am. Though I think that nickname's a bit generous. I'm just a mechanic." The alien's lips curved into a smile. "I heard otherwise. They say you can fix anything, even ships other mechanics declare beyond repair." Jack shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "I just see things differently, I guess. What can I do for you? Having trouble with your ship?" The alien's expression turned serious. "My name is Zara, and I am Crown Princess of the Lyrian Empire. I'm not here about a ship, Mr. Hawkins. I'm here about a job, one that could change your life and the fate of my people." Jack blinked, certain he had misheard. "I'm sorry. Did you say princess?" Zara nodded, her eyes darting around the hangar. "Perhaps we could speak somewhere more private." Moments later, Jack found himself in his cramped office, perched on the edge of his desk as the alien princess, Zara, occupied his worn chair. She sat with perfect posture, seemingly unbothered by the clutter and grime surrounding her. "I'll be blunt, Mr. Hawkins. I need a husband." Jack nearly choked on air. "Excuse me?" Zara held up a hand. "Not a real one. I need someone to pose as my consort for an upcoming galactic summit. Someone. Human." "Why me?" Jack asked, his mind reeling. "And why a human?" Zara's eyes seemed to glow brighter. "My people value resourcefulness and adaptability above all else. Humans have proven themselves to be masters of both. As for why you specifically, your reputation precedes you. You see solutions where others see only problems." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "There are factions within my empire who would use my unmarried status as leverage to seize power. By presenting a consort at the summit, I can buy time to solidify my position. And a human consort. Well, that would certainly throw my opponents off balance." Jack ran a hand through his messy hair. "This is insane. I'm a mechanic, not a diplomat. I don't know the first thing about galactic politics or alien customs." Zara's expression softened. "I can teach you what you need to know." And in return, she named a figure that made Jack's eyes bulge. It was more money than he'd ever seen in his life. Enough to buy his own ship, to finally live his dreams of exploration. "Why should I trust you?" Jack asked, even as a part of him already knew he was going to say yes. Zara stood, her regal bearing making the small office feel suddenly inadequate. "Because, Jack Hawkins, I believe that sometimes the universe puts the right people in the right place at the right time. You humans call it destiny. My people call it the cosmic dance. Whatever you call it, I think you and I were meant to meet." She extended a delicate blue-skinned hand. "So, what do you say? Ready to save an empire and change the course of galactic history?" Jack looked at her hand, then back at her face. He thought of all the ships he'd fixed, all the problems he'd solved. This was just another puzzle, albeit on a much grander scale, and Jack Hawkins had never been one to back down from a challenge. With a grin that was equal parts excitement and terror, he grasped Zara's hand. "When do we start?" As their hands touched, Jack felt a spark of energy pass between them. Zara's eyes widened slightly, and he knew she had felt it too. Whatever this was, wherever it led, nothing would ever be the same again. "Pack your things," Zara said, a hint of excitement creeping into her voice. "We leave for my ship in an hour. I hope you're a quick study, Mr. Hawkins. You have a lot to learn, and not much time to learn it." As Jack hurried to gather his meager possessions, his mind raced with possibilities. He was about to step into a world he'd only dreamed of, filled with alien politics and cosmic intrigue. Part of him wondered if he was making a huge mistake. But a larger part, the part that had always longed for adventure, for a chance to prove himself, was practically vibrating with anticipation. He cast one last look around the maintenance bay, at the life he was leaving behind. Then, with a deep breath and a silent prayer to whatever cosmic forces had brought him to this moment, Jack Hawkins stepped forward into his new life, as the fake husband of an alien princess. Little did he know, the adventure that awaited him would test not only his mechanical skills, but his courage, his wit, and his very understanding of what it meant to be human in a vast and complex galaxy. Crash course in alien etiquette. Jack Hawkins had thought he knew what it meant to be overwhelmed. He'd faced down malfunctioning warp cores and temperamental alien tech that seemed to defy the laws of physics. But nothing had prepared him for the whirlwind of information and training that awaited him aboard Princess Zara's ship, the Celestial Harmony. The vessel itself was a marvel of engineering, its sleek lines and shimmering hull unlike anything Jack had ever seen. As they walked through corridors that seemed to pulse with living light, Zara bombarded him with information. "The Lyrian Empire spans 17 star systems," she explained, her melodic voice taking on a lecturer's tone. "Our people value harmony, both with nature and technology. We believe in the interconnectedness of all things." Jack nodded, trying to take it all in. "And where do I fit into all this?" Zara's violet eyes met his. "You, Jack Hawkins, are about to become the most scrutinized being in the galaxy. As my supposed consort, every eye at the summit will be upon you. Your words, your actions, even your smallest gestures will be analyzed and dissected." She placed a hand on his arm, and Jack felt that same spark of energy he'd experienced in his office. "But remember, it is precisely your humanity that makes you valuable. Your unique perspective, your ability to think outside our rigid structures. These are your greatest assets." The next few days passed in a blur of lessons and simulations. Jack's head spun with the intricacies of Lyrian etiquette, the complex political landscape of the galactic community, and the myriad ways he could accidentally start an interstellar incident. "No, no." Zora sighed, exasperated. "The greeting is performed with the left hand, not the right. In our culture, offering the right hand is tantamount to a declaration of war." Jack groaned, flexing his cramped fingers. "How do you keep track of all this?" "Years of training," Zara replied dryly. "Now again." As grueling as the lessons were, Jack found himself oddly enjoying Zora's company. Beneath her regal exterior, he caught glimpses of a sharp wit and genuine passion for her people. He began to understand why she was willing to go to such lengths to protect them. One evening, as they sat reviewing diplomatic protocols over a meal of shimmering, color-changing fruits, Jack worked up the courage to ask a question that had been nagging at him. "Zara," he began hesitantly, "why did you really choose me for this? There must have been more qualified candidates." Zara set down her utensil, her luminous eyes meeting his. "You want the truth." Jack nodded. "I chose you, Jack Hawkins, because in all my observations of your species, you were the first human I met who looked at the stars with genuine wonder." Her voice softened. "Most see only resources to be exploited or territories to be conquered. But you see the beauty in it all." Jack felt a warmth spread through his chest at her words. "I thank you," he managed. Zara's expression softened. "It's a rare quality, Jack. One I admire greatly." For a moment, the air between them seemed charged with an unspoken tension. Then Zara cleared her throat. the moment passing. We should rest. Tomorrow, we begin combat training. Combat training. Jack sputtered. I thought I was supposed to be a diplomat. Zara's lips curved into a mischievous smile. Oh, Jack, in galactic politics, diplomacy and combat are often one and the same. The following days introduced Jack to a dizzying array of alien martial arts and defensive techniques. He found himself grappling with holographic opponents, learning to dodge energy blasts, and mastering the art of what Zara called tactical retreat. Remember, Zara instructed as Jack picked himself up off the training room floor for the umpteenth time. In Lyrian culture, there is no shame in avoiding a fight. True strength lies in knowing when to stand your ground and when to seek a peaceful solution. Jack wiped sweat from his brow, nodding. I think I prefer your people's approach to Earth's history of conflict. Zara's expression turned thoughtful. Your species' capacity for violence is well known throughout the galaxy. But so too is your capacity for kindness, for innovation, for overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds. It's what makes humans so fascinating, and so potentially dangerous. As the days wore on, Jack found himself not just memorizing facts and protocols, but truly immersing himself in Lyrian culture. He marveled at their art, intricate holograms that shifted and changed based on the viewer's emotions. He lost himself in their music, complex harmonies that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of space-time. And through it all, he found his admiration for Zara growing. Her dedication to her people, her quick mind, and her unflagging determination in the face of the challenges ahead impressed him more with each passing day. On the eve of their arrival at the Galactic Summit, Zara presented Jack with his official consort attire. The suit seemed to be made of living metal, shifting and adapting to his body as he put it on. How do I look? He asked, turning to face Zara. Her breath caught for a moment, her eyes widening slightly. Like a true Lyrian consort, she said softly. Then, with a hint of her usual playfulness, she added, though your posture could still use some work. Jack laughed, some of the tension easing from his shoulders. Well, I guess I'll just have to lean on you to keep me upright, princess. Zara's expression turned serious. Jack, before we arrive, there's something you should know. The stakes at this summit are higher than I initially let on. There are factions within the Empire who would see me fail, who believe that aligning with other species, especially humans, will weaken us. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. Are we in danger? Zara's eyes seemed to glow brighter. There is always danger in politics, Jack. But together, I believe we can navigate it. You've learned more in these few days than many diplomats learn in years. Trust your instincts, remember your training, and above all, be yourself. It's your humanity that makes you unique, and uniquely valuable. As the celestial harmony approached the massive space station where the summit would be held, Jack gazed out at the swirling nebula and distant stars. He thought of how far he'd come from that grimy maintenance bay, of the incredible journey that lay ahead. Ready to change the course of galactic history? Zara asked, coming to stand beside him. Jack took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. He thought of all the challenges he'd overcome as a mechanic, all the impossible problems he'd solved. This was just another puzzle, albeit on a grander scale, and Jack Hawkins had never been one to back down from a challenge. With a grin that was equal parts excitement and determination, he turned to Zara. Let's go save an empire. As they prepared to disembark, neither Jack nor Zara could have predicted the trials that awaited them. The Galactic Summit would test not just their deception, but their trust in each other, their beliefs, and the very foundations of their unlikely partnership. The fate of the Lyrian Empire, and perhaps the future of human-alien relations, hung in the balance. The stage was set. The players were in position, and as Jack Hawkins stepped into the dazzling, dangerous world of galactic politics, he carried with him the hopes, dreams, and indomitable spirit of humanity. Little did he know, the universe was about to learn just how remarkable humans could be. High-stakes deception, The grand conclave of the Galactic Summit was a sight that took Jack's breath away. Thousands of alien species, each more bizarre and beautiful than the last, mingled in a vast chamber that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The ceiling was a swirling map of the known universe, stars and planets shifting in real time as diplomats and dignitaries conducted their intricate dance of politics and power. Zara's hand found Jack's, their fingers intertwining. The gesture, practiced countless times over the past days, felt surprisingly natural. "Remember," she whispered, her lips barely moving, "you are Jack Hawkins, esteemed human diplomat, and my chosen consort. You belong here." Jack squared his shoulders, channeling every ounce of confidence he could muster. "Right, just another day fixing the unfixable. I've got this." As they moved deeper into the crowd, Jack found himself thrust into a whirlwind of introductions and small talk. He clung to his fabricated backstory like a lifeline, grateful for the hours of preparation Zora had drilled into him. "Ah, the princess and her human consort," boomed a voice that seemed to emanate from everywhere at once. A being composed entirely of shimmering energy approached them, its form constantly shifting and reforming. "Ambassador Lux," Zora greeted warmly. "May I present my chosen, Jack Hawkins?" Jack bowed, desperately trying to recall the proper etiquette for addressing an energy being. "It's an honor, Ambassador." The being pulsed with what Jack hoped was approval. "Fascinating. I've always found humans to be such volatile creatures. Tell me, how did you two meet?" Zara's grip on Jack's hand tightened almost imperceptibly. This was it, the moment of truth. Jack took a deep breath and launched into their carefully crafted story. "It was quite by chance, actually," he began, surprised by the confidence in his own voice. "I was serving as a diplomatic liaison on a distant outpost when Princess Zara's ship encountered some technical difficulties." Zara picked up the thread seamlessly. Jack's quick thinking and unique problem-solving skills not only saved my vessel, but prevented a potential diplomatic incident with a rather temperamental species in the sector. As they wove their tale, embellishing here and there with just enough truth to make it believable, Jack found himself watching Zara with genuine admiration. She commanded the conversation effortlessly, her every gesture and expression perfectly calibrated to support their story. And when he stood up to that Krylorian trade delegation, Zara finished, gazing up at Jack with convincing adoration. "Well, I knew I'd found someone special." Jack felt heat creep up his neck, and not entirely due to their act. "You give me too much credit, my dear," he managed. "I simply couldn't bear to see you insulted." Ambassador Lux thrummed with what sounded like approval. "A charming tale. You must be quite the diplomat yourself, Jack." Before Jack could respond, a new voice cut through the conversation. "Indeed. I'm most curious to hear more about your credentials." Jack turned to find himself face to face with a Lyrian male whose very presence seemed to drop the temperature of the room by several degrees. His blue skin was several shades darker than Zara's, etched with intricate patterns that pulsed with barely contained energy. But it was his eyes that sent a chill down Jack's spine, cold and calculating, devoid of the warmth that characterized Zara's gaze. "Counselor Vex." Zara's voice carried a hint of steel beneath its polite exterior. "How lovely to see you." The Lyrian's lips curled into what might generously be called a smile. "Princess, I must say, your choice of consort has caused quite a stir." Jack straightened, drawing on every ounce of diplomatic training Zara had instilled in him. "Counselor Vex, I presume. I've heard much about you." Vex's eyes narrowed slightly. "All good things, I hope." "Naturally," Jack replied smoothly, even as warning bells sounded in his head. This was clearly not a being to be trifled with. As the evening wore on, Jack found himself settling into his role with increasing ease. He and Zara moved through the crowd as a unit, their touches and glances becoming more natural with each passing hour. But beneath the veneer of diplomatic pleasantries, Jack's instincts screamed that something was off. It was during a lull in the festivities that he noticed it. Zara had excused herself moments earlier, citing a need to powder her nose, a human euphemism she picked up from him. But as Jack's eyes swept the room, he caught a glimpse of her iridescent form slipping through a side door, followed closely by a hooded figure he didn't recognize. Curiosity and a nagging sense of unease propelled Jack into motion. He made his way casually toward the door, careful not to draw attention. As he neared, he could hear the faint murmur of voices from the other side. Running out of time, a gruff, unfamiliar voice was saying, "If we don't act soon." "I'm well aware of the stakes," Zara's voice replied, tight with tension. "But we can't rush this. One false move, and everything falls apart." Jack leaned closer, straining to hear more, when a heavy hand fell on his shoulder. He spun around, coming face to face with Counselor Vex's cold stare. "Eavesdropping, Mr. Hawkins." Vex's voice dripped with false concern. "How very human of you." Jack's mind raced, searching for a plausible excuse. "Not at all, Counselor. I was simply looking for the refreshment area. I'm afraid I'm still getting used to the layout of this magnificent station." Vex's eyes bored into him, searching for any sign of deception. "Indeed. Well, allow me to escort you. We wouldn't want the princess's consort to get lost." As Vex steered him away from the door, Jack caught one last glimpse of Zara emerging, her face a mask of careful neutrality. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and Jack saw a flicker of something. Fear, warning, before she smoothly rejoined the party. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and carefully chosen words. Jack felt like he was walking on eggshells, acutely aware of the watchful eyes of Vex and his allies. Every conversation seemed to have hidden meanings, every gesture a potential misstep. It was well past midnight when Jack and Zara finally retired to their quarters. As soon as the door slid shut behind them, Zara's regal posture crumpled, and she sank onto a plush chair with a weary sigh. "That was intense," Jack said, loosening the collar of his ornate suit. Zara looked up at him, her luminous eyes filled with a mixture of exhaustion and something else. Pride. "You did well, Jack. Better than I could have hoped." "Thanks, but I don't think everyone was convinced." "That Counselor Vex." "Vex is a problem," Zara interrupted, her voice hardening. "He represents a faction that believes the Lyrian Empire should remain isolated, freed from the corrupting influence of other species." Jack's brow furrowed. "And your marriage to a human would be seen as the ultimate corruption." Zara nodded. "Precisely. But there's more at stake here than just my position, Jack. The future of the entire galaxy could hinge on the outcome of this summit." "What do you mean?" Jack asked, a sense of foreboding settling in his gut. Zara stood, pacing the room. "There are forces at work here, ancient and powerful, that seek to upset the balance of power in the galaxy. If they succeed—" She trailed off, her eyes distant. "Hey," Jack said softly, moving to stand in front of her. "Whatever's going on, we'll figure it out. That's why you brought me here, right? To see solutions where others see only problems." A small smile tugged at Zara's lips. "Indeed it is, Jack Hawkins." She reached out, her hand cupping his cheek. "I'm glad you're here." For a moment, they stood there, the air between them charged with unspoken emotions. Then Zara stepped back, her professional demeanor sliding back into place. "We should rest. Tomorrow will be even more challenging." As Jack lay in bed that night, his mind raced with the events of the day. He thought of Vex's cold stare, of the mysterious hooded figure, of the weight of responsibility that seemed to press down on Zora's shoulders. Whatever was really going on here, whatever forces were at work behind the scenes, Jack knew one thing for certain. He was in way over his head, but as sleep finally claimed him, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered a reminder. He was human, and if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was adapting to impossible situations. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, But Jack Hawkins was ready to face them head-on, armed with nothing but his wits, his training, and the indomitable spirit of humanity. Little did he know, the true test of his abilities and his loyalty was yet to come. Unveiling the truth. The second day of the Galactic Summit dawned with an air of tension that seemed to permeate the very walls of the space station. As Jack adjusted his formal attire, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of a precipice, one wrong move away from disaster. Zara emerged from her chambers, resplendent in a gown that shimmered with the light of 1,000 stars. But Jack noticed the tightness around her eyes, the slight tremor in her normally steady hands. "Ready for another day of high-stakes deception?" he asked, trying to inject some levity into the situation. Zara's lips curved into a wan smile. "As ready as one can be when the fate of galaxies hangs in the balance." As they made their way to the Grand Assembly Hall, Jack's mind raced with questions. What were the ancient and powerful forces Zora had mentioned? How did they tie into the political maneuverings they'd witnessed? And most importantly, what was his role in all of this? The Assembly Hall was a marvel of alien architecture, its vaulted ceiling a perfect replica of the galactic core. Thousands of delegates from hundreds of worlds filled the tiered seating, their murmurs creating a low, constant hum. As Zara took her place at the Lyrian delegation's podium, Jack settled into a seat nearby, keenly aware of the watchful eyes of Counselor Vex and his allies. The summit's arbiter, a being of pure energy similar to Ambassador Lux, called the session to order. For hours, Jack listened as delegates debated trade agreements, border disputes, and arcane points of interstellar law. Despite his crash course in galactic politics, much of it went over his head. But he kept his eyes and ears open, watching for any sign of the larger game at play. It was during a heated debate over mining rights in a disputed sector that Jack noticed something odd. A delegate from a species he didn't recognize, a tall, spindly being with iridescent scales, was making an impassioned argument. But as Jack watched, he realized the delegate's gestures didn't quite match their words. It was subtle, almost imperceptible. But Jack's eyes widened as realization struck. The delegate was using hand signals, signals that matched patterns he'd seen in the circuitry of malfunctioning ships. They were broadcasting a message, hidden in plain sight. He leaned forward, focusing intently on the delegate's hands. Isolate, converge, initiate. The words formed in his mind, each gesture corresponding to a circuit pathway he'd memorized over years of mechanical work. A chill ran down Jack's spine. This wasn't just political maneuvering. This was a code, a signal to initiate something big. As the session broke for recess, Jack made his way to Zora, his heart pounding. "We need to talk," he whispered urgently. "Now." Zora nodded almost imperceptibly, and they slipped away from the crowd, finding a quiet alcove off the main corridor. "What is it?" Zora asked, her voice low. Jack took a deep breath. "I think I've uncovered part of the plot you mentioned. That delegate from the Sci-Fi system. They were using hand signals that matched starship circuitry patterns. It's a code, Zora. They're planning something, and it's happening soon." Zora's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and respect flashing across her face. "Jack, that's incredible. How did you even notice that?" "I'm a mechanic, remember? I've spent my life reading the language of machines. This was just another dialect." Before Zara could respond, a commotion erupted in the main hall. Shouts and screams echoed through the corridors, followed by a bone-shaking rumble that seemed to come from the very core of the station. "It's starting," Zora breathed, her face pale. "We're too late." They rushed back to the assembly hall, only to find chaos. The artificial gravity was fluctuating wildly, sending delegates floating helplessly. The holographic displays that normally showed star charts and treaty texts now flickered with ominous red warnings. "What's happening?" Jack shouted over the din. Zara's voice was grim. "They're trying to collapse the quantum stabilizers." If they succeed, this entire sector of space will be torn apart, destroying the power balance of a dozen galaxies in one fell swoop. Jack's mind raced. Quantum stabilizers, artificial gravity gone haywire, circuitry-based hand signals. Suddenly, it all clicked into place. "Zara," he said, grabbing her arm. "I think I know how to stop this." Her eyes met his, a glimmer of hope breaking through the fear. "How?" "It's like a ship with a cascading system failure. If we can isolate the primary power conduits and reroute them through a manual bypass, we might be able to stabilize the quantum field long enough to shut down the sabotage attempt." Zara stared at him for a moment. Then a slow smile spread across her face. "This is why I chose you, Jack Hawkins. Lead the way." What followed was a mad dash through the bowels of the space station, Jack's instincts and mechanical knowledge guiding them through a labyrinth of pulsing energy conduits and quantum processors. They encountered resistance, security drones reprogrammed by the conspirators, force fields designed to halt their progress. But each obstacle only served to sharpen Jack's focus. He jury-rigged bypasses, recalibrated quantum relays, and at one point, used his belt buckle to bridge a critical circuit. All the while, Zara watched in amazement as this human, this simple mechanic she plucked from obscurity, worked miracles with nothing but his wits and determination. They reached the central control hub just as alarms blared, warning of imminent quantum collapse. Jack's hands flew over the controls, his mind translating the alien technology into familiar patterns of energy flow and circuit logic. "Jack," Zara's voice was tight with tension. "We're running out of time." "Almost there," Jack muttered, sweat beading on his brow. "Just need to." There. With a final adjustment, the alarms fell silent. The station's lights flickered, then stabilized. Through the viewports, they could see the swirling quantum distortions that had threatened to tear apart space itself slowly dissipating. Jack sagged against the control panel, exhaustion and relief washing over him in equal measure. "We did it," he breathed. Zara's hand found his, squeezing gently. "No, Jack, you did it. You saved us all." As they made their way back to the assembly hall, they were met with a mix of confusion, relief, and suspicion. Counselor Vex approached, his cold eyes now burning with barely contained fury. "What have you done?" he hissed. "You've ruined everything." "What we've done," Zora replied, her voice ringing with authority, "is prevent a catastrophe that would have destabilized half the known universe and exposed a plot that goes far beyond simple political maneuvering." She turned to address the gathered delegates, her voice carrying across the now silent hall. "Honored representatives, we have all been pawns in a game far larger and more dangerous than we realized. But thanks to the ingenuity and bravery of my consort, Jack Hawkins, we now have a chance to uncover the truth and forge a new path forward." As Zara launched into an explanation of the foiled plot, Jack found himself the center of attention. Delegates from 100 worlds stared at him with a mixture of awe, gratitude, and curiosity. He shifted uncomfortably, unused to such scrutiny. But as he looked around the room, at the beings whose lives he'd just saved, Jack felt a swell of pride. He might be just a mechanic, but today, he'd proven that humanity had something unique and valuable to offer the galactic community. As the summit dissolved into urgent discussions and hurried conferences, Jack felt a tug on his sleeve. He turned to find Ambassador Lux, the energy being's form pulsing with what seemed like excitement. "Mr. Hawkins," Lux's voice thrummed, "it seems we have greatly underestimated your species. Perhaps it is time for humanity to take a larger role in galactic affairs." Jack smiled, thinking of all the humans back on Earth who dreamed of the stars, of exploration and discovery. "Ambassador," he replied, "I think that's an excellent idea." As he turned back to Zara, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, Jack knew that nothing would ever be the same again. For himself, for Zara, for the Lyrian Empire, and for humanity as a whole. The stars had never seemed brighter or more full of promise. Humanity's triumph, The days following the thwarted attack on the Galactic Summit were a whirlwind of activity. Jack found himself at the center of a storm of attention, his actions scrutinized and celebrated in equal measure. Delegates from across the galaxy sought his insights, marveling at the unique problem-solving skills that had saved them all. As the summit drew to a close, Jack stood beside Zara on a balcony overlooking the vast expanse of space. The stars seemed brighter somehow, as if acknowledging the pivotal moment in galactic history they had just witnessed. "So," Jack said, breaking the comfortable silence between them, "what happens now?" Zara turned to him, her luminous eyes filled with a mixture of emotions: gratitude, admiration, and something deeper that made Jack's heart skip a beat. "Now, Jack Hawkins," she said softly, "everything changes." And change it did. In the weeks and months that followed, the ripples of Jack's actions spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On Earth, news of Jack's heroism sparked a renewed interest in space exploration and diplomacy. Governments and private corporations alike poured resources into developing new technologies, eager to bridge the gap between Earth and the wider galactic community. Jack found himself shuttling between Earth and the far reaches of known space, serving as a liaison between humanity and the myriad alien civilizations that now looked upon his species with newfound respect and curiosity. He stood before the United Nations, recounting his experiences and advocating for increased cooperation with alien races. "We have something unique to offer," he told the rapt audience. "Our adaptability, our creativity, our ability to see solutions where others see only problems. These are gifts we can share with the galaxy." In the Lyrian Empire, Zara's position was stronger than ever. The exposure of the plot against her had rooted out the most ardent isolationists, paving the way for a new era of openness and cooperation. She implemented reforms that would see the Lyrians take a more active role in galactic affairs, with a particular focus on fostering ties with humanity. Councillor Vex and his co-conspirators faced justice, their trial becoming a landmark case in galactic law. The proceedings revealed a vast network of corruption and manipulation that spanned multiple species and sectors, leading to sweeping reforms in how interstellar relations were conducted. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the galaxy viewed humanity. No longer were they seen as a primitive, volatile species best left to their own devices. Instead, humans were increasingly sought out for their unique perspectives and problem-solving abilities. Alien delegations visited Earth in greater numbers, eager to learn from and collaborate with humans in fields ranging from technology to art, from philosophy to cuisine. Human music and literature found appreciative audiences on distant worlds, while Earth's universities welcomed students and scholars from across the stars. Jack's old repair shop in the rundown spaceport became a pilgrimage site of sorts, with aspiring human space travelers and curious aliens alike coming to see where the hero of the summit had started his journey. One evening, about a year after the events of the summit, Jack found himself back on the Celestial Harmony, Zara's personal ship. They stood in the observation deck, watching as Earth grew smaller in the distance, embarking on yet another diplomatic mission. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" Zara asked, her hand finding Jack's with practiced ease. Jack chuckled, shaking his head. "Never in a million years. I was just a guy who was good at fixing things. I never thought I'd end up helping to reshape the galaxy." Zara's expression softened. "You still are that guy, Jack. You just fixed something much bigger than a starship engine." As they gazed out at the star-streaked vista of hyperspace, Jack reflected on the incredible journey that had brought him to this point. From a struggling mechanic to a key figure in human-alien relations, his life had transformed in ways he could never have predicted. But more than that, he thought about how humanity as a whole had risen to the challenge. The exposure to alien cultures had not diminished human spirit or identity. If anything, it had strengthened it. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not by conquering or dominating, but by offering its unique gifts to a vast and varied galactic community. "You know," Jack said, turning to Zara with a grin, I never did thank you properly for offering me that crazy job back in my repair shop." Zara's laugh was like music. "Oh, and how do you plan to thank me, Jack Hawkins?" In response, Jack pulled her close, their lips meeting in a kiss that seemed to bridge not just the gap between their species, but the vast expanses of space and time that had brought them together. As they parted, both slightly breathless, a notification chimed softly. Another mission, another challenge to face. But this time, they would face it together, a human and a Lyrian, representing the best of what their peoples had to offer. Jack squared his shoulders, ready to tackle whatever the universe might throw at them next. After all, he was human, and if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was adapting to the impossible and making it look easy. As the celestial harmony cruised towards their next destination, Jack knew that this was just the beginning. Humanity had taken its first real steps into the galactic community, and the future stretched out before them, as vast and full of potential as the star-filled sky. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever new wonders or dangers the universe might hold, humanity was ready. Ready to learn, ready to grow, and ready to show the galaxy just what they were capable of. For Jack Hawkins, former mechanic turned galactic diplomat, the greatest adventure of all was just beginning, and he couldn't wait to see where it would lead.